All right, what is up, and welcome back to the Build a Better You podcast. I'm your host Austin Chan, and today it's going to be a bit of an unconventional podcast. So rather than covering just a singular topic on fitness related, I'm going to be doing a Q&A episode here, just answering a bunch of questions that I got through on Instagram. So if you have found me through like other social media platforms, if you're here from TikTok, if you are here just from the organic podcast search or through any of my other channels and social media platforms, then go ahead, and if you don't follow me on Instagram already, go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram. I'm a bit more active on there nowadays just because of the nature of the platform. Honestly, like Instagram just has everything. It has stories, it has feed posts, it has reels. It just got everything, and I feel like I can engage a bit better with my audience on a more personal level rather than TikTok is just simply like posting videos. But yeah, give me a follow on Instagram. It's just Austin Chan Fitness, just the same as all of my other platforms. But yeah, go ahead and give me a follow there and interact with me on a more personal level. But other than that, let's get into this episode of the Q&A. And first question here is, how many carbs should you consume on a bulk? So there's no really one size fits all answer for this. So basically on a bulk, or if you're trying to be in a gaining phase, then you want to get a small surplus. So generally, in terms of calories, I'd say start with like wherever you are at maintenance and add 10% to that. So let's say you're eating 2,000 calories. Let's say that's the amount that you need to maintain your current body weight. I would add 10%. So 10% of that would be 200 calories. If you're eating 3,000, that would be 300 extra calories. And then start from there, see how the rate of gain is, and if you need to increase or decrease if you're not seeing like progress in the gym. And that's by far the number one best marker as to like, is your bulk working? It's like, are you consistently able to add weight onto your lifts? Are you consistently able to add reps with the current weight onto your lifts week over week and month over month? And yeah, that's basically like how it is. Like, I wouldn't pay too much attention to weight gain because then you can get into the mentality of like, oh, eat big to get big, and you think that the scale weight, as it's going up more and more, you're just gaining more muscle, but it's not. It doesn't work like that. Your body only builds muscle at a certain rate, and when you exceed that rate of weight gain, you're just gonna be putting on extra fat, and in the end, you're just gonna give yourself body dysmorphia because you're gonna look at yourself in the mirror, you're gonna look a little bit more puffy than you'd like, and you're not gaining like as much muscle as you thought you were. You're just gaining like a ton of fat, and then later down the road, you're going to be unhappy with the way you look eventually, and then you're just going to have to diet off that weight anyway, and you're just going to be working extra hard to like diet. So it's just not worth it to be in that like eat big to get big mentality of like thinking a bigger surplus is just going to be bigger gains. Just focus on, gaining strength in the gym. Like, are you doing that consistently over time? And if you are, then everything's dialed in terms of nutrition. I mean, if you stop, then that's another story. Then you'd have to look at your nutrition. But yeah, I wouldn't pay too much attention to that, to amount of the weight that you're gaining. As for like carbs specifically, there is no, magical number. Generally, I recommend like even like when you're cutting, maintaining, or bulking, you generally want to keep protein levels the same, and fats and carbs are gonna be like individually like preferential. Like, some people love eating more fats, some people love eating more carbs. However, there is a significant amount of evidence to show that muscle building, you do want a good amount of carbs. Like, you don't want to go no carb. Like, that's why when people are like, oh yeah, keto's so good for muscle building, it's like, no, it's actually not. Your body actually needs carbs to build muscle because your body's primary source of energy is through carbohydrates, and you need a lot of energy if you want to like help with the muscle synthesis process, because protein only it provides the material that's needed to build the muscle, but in order to get that energy to build that actual muscle, carbs are going to be your best bet. And in terms of like general recommendation, by and large, most people are going to function better with higher carbs and lower fats. And this isn't to say that you should be eating no fats, but as a general recommendation, I'd say anywhere from 10 to 20% of your macro split should be from fats. Your protein is 1 gram, set at 1 gram per pound of body weight, so whatever percentage that calculates out to be for you, and then the rest should be from carbs. And then in terms of like a bulk, your surplus should mainly come from carbs. Then this is like if you want to dial everything in. Like if you don't want to worry too much about it, then like you can just add a little bit extra fats, add a little bit of extra carbs. But if you really want to dial in your nutrition, if like performance and you're trying to go for maximal muscle gain and like really want to dial everything in, then you should be getting most of your surplus from carbs. And that's because, as much as people want to say, carbs are actually like the most preferential source of energy for your body. So if it wants to use that for energy, it's actually not going to want to like store carbs as fat. Like preferentially your body, like let's say you're not in a huge surplus, you have everything like regular and dialed in for the most part, your body's going to use carbs for energy, protein for all like building muscle, and for, you know, turning over protein in your body, whether it's to like repair your organs, whether it's to repair just basically anything in your body that's made up of protein, it's going to use protein for that. And then fats is basically what your body uses as fat storage, and, you know, like anything that your body needs like lipids for, like for like the synthesis of like certain like lipids, like cell bodies, the cell layer on top, that's like made of lipids. It's also used for like fat storage as well, and just a bunch of like hormonal stuff. Like hormonal stuff are basically made up of like a lot of lipids and fats. So fats are basically used for that purpose. So preferentially, like if you get most of your surplus, say from like fats, then your body's going to be storing a little bit more fat, versus if you got it more from carbs, then you wouldn't be storing a lot of that carbs as like fat in the surplus. But with that being said, like it still does come down to like calories in, calories out. As long as you're in a controlled surplus, you're not going to be putting on a huge like a shit ton of fat. So don't worry too much about that. I would say if you did want to dial everything in, get most of your surplus from carbs. But again, calories in, calories out. And, you know, macros matter, but they don't matter like a whole ton. Just as long as if you're just like a lifestyle person like me, like I don't pay too much attention to my carbs, honestly, even though I love this fitness thing. Like for me, it's more of like, I want to get like, you know, as maximally jacked and strong as possible, but also I want to balance like my lifestyle in it. Like, so I don't pay too close attention. Like I don't even track macros anymore. Like I just eat whatever I want in terms of like, as long as I know like ballpark, I'm eating this many amount of calories, I just break it down to however I want. I just have a healthy amount of carbs, healthy amount of fats, and a good amount of protein with every meal, and everything's working out for me. So yeah, don't pay too much attention to it unless you really want to, but get most of your surplus from carbs if you really want to dial things in. And all right, that answers question number one. That was quite a long spiel for just one question. So on to question number two, favorite way to track workouts. So honestly, before I got a coach, my coach actually delivers programming through an app now. But my favorite way before, when I used to write programs for myself, and the way I do it with clients now. So the way I used to do it for myself, I would just literally pull up the notes app on my phone, and I'll just write down the workout. Like I'll write down the workout name, like let's say it was like chest, back, biceps, or whatever. I'll write that down, write down the date, write down the list of exercises. I'll write down, you know, the sets that I did, the working sets. So let's say like the first exercise of that day was dumbbell bench press. So I wrote down dumbbell bench press, and let's say I did, you know, the 80-pound dumbbells for a set of 12, 10, and 8. So I would write down literally dumbbell bench press 80, and then I would write X 12, comma, X 10, comma, X 8. So I would know first exercise, dumbbell bench press, I did 12 reps with 80 pounds for the first set, 80 pounds for 10 reps for the second set, and then 80 pounds for 8 reps on the third set. And that's basically how I track my workouts. And then every time I'd log another workout, I just literally copy and paste it last time. I had to have last week's or last session's numbers on there, and I would strive to beat that. And then that's basically what it did. Like, don't overcomplicate it. You don't need a fancy app. You don't need like anything fancy. Like I see some people in the gym, they literally have like one of those composition notebooks that you have from like elementary school, and like that works too, as long as you have some way of like recording it down and making sure that you're beating previous numbers. Then that's pretty much it. Like, don't overcomplicate it. You don't need this fancy app to track everything. Just like, as long as you have something to record and you're keeping yourself accountable, so that you're like, next session, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in next session with the intention of trying to beat my previous numbers, of trying to get better than last time. And that's basically it. As for how I track with clients, we use Google Sheets. So I'll pull up a Google Sheets. I'll like basically write down like their entire workout in the Excel sheet, and then we'll create a new sheet for every workout, and basically we'll record from there. And that way with Google Sheets, we can kind of collaborate in a sense. Like my clients can actually put in their numbers, and then I can go in and look and see if they're staying accountable to the program, seeing if they're pushing themselves, and also gives me like a good amount of feedback as to like, is this program actually working? Do I need to make adjustments down the road? Should I ask them specific questions pertaining to how the training is going and all that? But yeah, that just gives me another just like metric to keep track of everything. But yeah, Google Sheets, and like there's that collaboration thing as well, so that they can input and I can input things. So yeah, it's like it's just something that we can work together on. So yeah, like I don't do all these like fancy apps that you see a lot of like trainers and coaches and other people do, because I think that just like overcomplicates things. And also like, this is just my personal opinion in terms of like from a business perspective. Like I don't want to be building my house on somebody's lawn. I don't know if you've heard of that saying, but like Google, honestly, I don't think Google is going anywhere anytime soon. Google has been here for decades. I think it's going to stay here for decades or even longer or even forever. But yeah, Google's going to be here forever. Like these apps, you don't know if they might go under one day. And like if they go under, because these are smaller companies. So if they go under one day and you have all of your data on there, and like if I had all my client stuff on there and I lost it all one day, I would be devastated. Like it would literally, my business would just go away like that. Whereas like Google, I know they're here to stay for a very long time. So like I don't think that Google's gonna suddenly go under one day. So yeah, that's just my perspective. But yeah, back to the tracking thing. Don't overcomplicate it. You can literally just use your Notes app. If you like one of those apps and you just like all of the little bells and whistles and functions they have, and you don't mind, like some of them I know they have like paid features. If you don't mind paying a little bit for it, it's probably maybe like $5-10 a month. If you don't mind investing that much just to like get a bit more streamlined interface and everything, then by all means go for it. But again, you don't need anything fancy. I literally used my Notes app for like years until I got a coach and he delivers it through an app. But yeah. All right, that answers that question. On to the next question: how to find squat stance that best works for your anatomy. So I recently did an Instagram post on this, showing like a full demonstration, like with me talking and showing you how to do it. So go ahead and check that out on my Instagram if you want like more of a visual, but I'm gonna try my best to explain it on here on the podcast. So as to how to find your squat stance that best works for your anatomy. So first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna lie down flat on the ground, with your back on the ground, obviously. And you're gonna try to bring your knees like up as if like you're doing a squat in a sense. Like you're gonna pull your knees up as close to your chest as you can, and you're gonna try to maintain that neutral spine, because again, when you're trying to squat, you want to maintain a neutral spine. You don't want to put your spine under loaded flexion or extension. So bring your knees up as close to your chest as you can while keeping like your lower back flat against the floor. And basically you're gonna find that spot like where you internally or externally rotate your legs and abduct them or adduct them until you kind of find that spot that's most comfortable, that your knees can kind of like sit close to your chest. And that's basically the most comfortable position for your deep squat. And this is going to vary from person to person. I know I've heard that some people say like, oh, everyone should be doing like hip width or shoulder width apart or just this one like stance. But it's like, no, everyone's built slightly different. And squat stance is actually influenced by so many factors. Like it could be influenced by the way that like your joints connect together. Like one huge factor is like literally how your femur, or that like the upper thigh bone, how that part inserts into like your hip socket. That's like a huge influence. It's like not even also how it inserts, but also how deep it inserts, what angle it inserts at. That affects your squat stance as well. How your knees are gonna like track out, and how your ankles are, and like all this like really influences like what your squat anatomy looks like. So there is no kind of like one stance fits all in a sense. You have to find this out for yourself. And one thing I always try to drive home is that not everyone will be able to achieve that perfect squat form. You see, like a lot of Olympic lifters, they're able to squat like beautifully, ass to grass, perfect neutral spine, and sit really deep and upright into the squat. And like honestly, not everyone's gonna look like that. So and that's okay, because everyone's built slightly different. And this is something, when I first started out as a trainer, that I didn't realize. I tried to make everyone do this picture perfect squat. But as I worked with more and more people, the more I realized like everyone's built slightly different. And it's not so much that we should be trying to fit everyone into this one box that's quote perfection, but rather we should be designing programs that best fit around someone's structure. So not everyone's going to be able to squat perfectly. I know that everyone is able to squat, but not everyone's squat is going to look the same. And, for some people, squats might not be the best exercise for them to build quads or to build glutes or to build certain movement patterns, or not movement patterns, but to build certain muscles or to train certain things. And that's okay. Like, not everyone has to squat, and like, you don't have to squat. Like, that's not something that you have to do. No exercise is like inherently dangerous or inherently mandatory for everyone to do. So yeah, that's the best way to find the squat stance. If you had trouble kind of understanding how I tried to describe it in this podcast, then go ahead and go to my Instagram and check that out. It was posted pretty recently, so you shouldn't have to scroll that far down. But yeah, that's how you find the squat stance that works best for your anatomy. All right, next question: how to lose belly fat? Oh my gosh, I get this question maybe like at least 10 times a day. But yeah, basically how you lose belly fat is how you lose fat in every single other area in your body. Unfortunately, we don't get to choose where we store or lose body fat. So with that being said, it's gonna come down to calorie deficit, strength training to build muscle, to help you boost your metabolism, to help you build muscle and look leaner as you lose that fat. Getting daily activity in, like steps, cardio, and all that. And calorie deficit should mainly come from your nutrition, eating mostly nutritious, whole, quality food sources, and that should help keep you full. It's not necessarily that's the driving factor in terms of calorie deficit. It's like you could eat Twinkies all day in a calorie deficit and you would lose weight, but you probably wouldn't feel the best. So eating whole, quality, nutritious foods in your deficit, and eventually it'll come off. First, most people, the belly it's unfortunately the most stubborn part of the body, so it's typically like one of the last few places that you're going to lose fat. So it's just a matter of consistency and patience. And for some people, it might not be in the cards to get like super lean to the point where like you have like a shredded six-pack with like super visible abs and like lower ab veins. And for some people, you might like have that last bit of fat in the lower belly, and it's just very hard to get off. I know I was one of those people. And it wasn't until like I did get to a point where I got absolutely like peeled, or I didn't get absolutely peeled, but I got pretty lean, like to the point where I had lower ab veins and everything. I had like kind of like the quote like single digit body fat that a lot of guys achieve. But at the same time, when I was like in there, like my state of mind was just like not good. Like I was hungry all the time. I constantly thought about food. My energy sucked. My sex drive was pretty much non-existent. My workout sucked. So like you have to also realize that like if you want to get absolutely like shredded and lose that body fat, it's not even just a matter of like if you want to lose that body fat or not. It's a matter of like, are you willing to deal with the possible consequences that come with that? Because especially on social media, you'll see that a lot of it might seem like everyone's like that, but when you look around, like not everyone is like that, and also not everyone is able to achieve that without consequences. So the guys you see on social media, they might be able to maintain that effortlessly and have good energy levels, good sex drive, like good energy in the gym and good performance levels. But for most people, it's just not realistic to be at that body fat percentage while also trying to live life and enjoy life. So yeah, that's something to think about. But yeah, as far as losing belly fat goes, same thing as every other body part. Calorie deficit, strength train, get strong, daily activity, eat quality, nutritious foods. Like, don't overcomplicate it. And also get a good amount of sleep. I think that should go without being said. But yeah, get a good amount of sleep, get good quality sleep. All right, next question. Does body fat percentage matter for deficit? Short answer, it's no, it doesn't really. It doesn't really matter for your deficit. Your deficit is going to come from literally trial and error of finding out your calories, finding out how much it takes to maintain your current body weight and body fat percentage, and then going down from there and getting into a sustainable deficit in order to lower your body fat percentage. And also, you want to also eat quality whole nutritious food sources, eat a lot of protein, strength train, so that you actually keep the lean mass on your body. And so you lose like primarily fat. So you shooting for just like straight fat loss, not trying to lose like as much weight as possible and get everything off your body. we want to be focusing on fat loss, and I'm sure that's your main focus too. Like, you don't want to be losing bone density, you don't want to be losing muscle mass, you just want to be losing fat. That's mostly, you know, what people want to achieve. You just strictly want to lose fat, and we should be creating conditions that help you just lose primarily fat rather than losing muscle, rather than losing water. Like, rather than losing all those other things, you're gonna just primarily focus on losing fat. And as far as body fat percentage goes, it doesn't matter as in like a general scheme of things, but what I'm trying to also get at is that, like, specifically, like, people with higher body fat percentage are typically higher in body weight. So therefore, in that sense, like, people who have more weight to lose can get away with a slightly higher deficit because they have more weight to lose, obviously. And also because when you have so much weight to lose, you're probably in like a very elevated state of like some people may have insulin resistance. Some people just may have, they're just like so far above the like body set point that they can get away with a steeper deficit. Like, they just don't have as much hunger levels as someone who is leaner, who is trying to like get from like average-ish body fat percentage to getting like very lean. Like, that is a completely different story, because when you have so much more fat to lose, your body's like, okay, we're fine with losing fat because we have so much of it. Whereas when your body fat percentages are lower, then body fat sort of becomes a little bit more essential for bodily function and bodily health. So then getting like from average to like shred, in a sense, it's going to be harder, and you're not going to be able to sustain a higher or steeper deficit. Whereas if you go from, let's say, obese to trying to get down to just like overweight or even average, and losing those initial pounds, you're going to be able to get away with a slightly higher deficit. And again, this is going to differ from person to person. Some people just aren't that hungry when they're dieting, and some people are just starving when they're dieting. So it's about, you know, finding the deficit that works for you, and also considering what is your starting point and what does your like, you know, journey look like in terms of how much fat you have to lose or how much weight you have to lose total. And as a good general rule of thumb, 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. And so because it's a percentage, someone with a higher body weight can get away with a higher percentage, which means not higher percentage. They can get away with a higher weight because that percentage is going to be a larger number, whereas someone who is smaller can get away with a higher number because the percentage of a lower number is going to be a smaller number. So yeah. All right, next question. What do I suggest for ab workouts? You know, honestly, I don't suggest ab workouts. I personally, I hate ab workouts. I don't like programming them at all. I think most people don't need ab workouts. I've only had maybe like a handful of clients where like they legitimately needed it because they had like some sort of, you know, pre-existing condition that caused them to have a very weak like lower back or core issue, and they actually had to strengthen their core in that sense. But I think by and large, most people, like, their core strength is fine. And especially if you do a lot of like huge compound movements, like, you know, deadlifts and squats and, you know, standing movements, like maybe like a standing overhead press and all that, you're going to get a lot of core activation because your body is literally trying to stand there and stabilize all that weight that you're holding on top of you or even holding just in your hands. So you're going to get a lot of core activation that way. Although if you do want extra core work, if you do like ab work, although I don't know why you would, then I would suggest ab workouts in sort of like 3 divisions, if you will. So the first division is going to be some sort of like spinal flexion from your torso up. So any kind of like crunch variation where, you know, you're crunching your upper body towards, crunching your upper body down. And then second division or movement will be like lower abs in a sense where you're crunching lower. So any sort of like leg raise or something like that, or, you know, reverse crunch. And then some sort of rotational or anti-rotational movement. So rotational movements would be something like, you know, Russian twists, where you're working like the obliques or the rotational component of your core and abs. And oh man, what's the one I'm thinking of? Why am I blanking? Oh, Padlock presses. Padlock presses are a very good anti-rotational movement. If you look it up and see what it is, it's P-A-L-L-O-F, Padlock, and press. So that's going to be basically like you're trying to resist rotational movement. So that's going to be excellent for like isometric stability of the core. And yeah, that's basically what I do suggest. Although in the grand scheme of things, I don't suggest ab workouts at all. I freaking hate them, and I think I get enough core work from doing a lot of heavy compound movements. So yeah. All right, next question here. This isn't really fitness related, it looks like. So favorite cheat foods and I put cheat foods in quotes because I don't think of, going off plan or going like eating, fun foods, like typically foods that you don't like typically classify as healthy or nutritious. I don't see them as cheat foods because cheating implies that you're doing something bad or you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing on your diet. And whenever I have those foods, I don't see it as a cheat. Like I literally just see it as like I'm enjoying myself. This is something I know I don't do every single day. This is just something that I do once in a while, and I'm enjoying myself, having a good time with friends and family. And I don't see it as a cheat food or a cheat day in a sense. I just eat whatever I want. I eat until I'm not hungry anymore. I eat until I'm satisfied, and I don't like do that on a regular basis. And that's basically how I see it. And yeah, that's why I put cheat foods in quotes. And I think you should see it that way too. Like if it's a part of your diet, if it's like something that you're including to your diet, like that's in moderation, and it's something that you are doing it as part of maintaining a balanced and healthy, well-rounded diet and lifestyle, then it shouldn't be considered cheating. So as far as favorite kind of quote cheat foods go, I'm a huge foodie. Like if anyone knows me in real life, they know that I eat a shit ton of food. I just have a huge appetite, and it's always been like that since when I was a little kid. Like honestly, thinking back, I feel so bad for my parents because they probably have to spend so much money on food because of my huge ass freaking appetite. But yeah, I'm a huge foodie. I just love food. I honestly think that if I didn't stumble upon like this whole fitness lifestyle, I would definitely be very overweight. So yeah, I mean, not to say that I'm doing this to burn all those calories off, but I love fitness, but I would say, yeah, if I didn't have this lifestyle, I definitely would be a little bit heavier than I am right now in terms of, body fat percentage, body composition, and all that. Yeah. But as far as that goes, I love smoked meats, like just like anything, any like kind of smoked meat, just the flavor it imparts. It's absolutely delicious. Love some poke, and although that's not really a cheat food. This is like fish, super lean, mixed with in some like mayo or something. Not really cheat food, but that's like foods that I like love, and I don't have them like all that often. But yeah, smoked meats, like a really good like fatty piece of like brisket or steak or prime rib and all that. Those are I would consider those more like cheat foods just because they're very high calories, so I don't have them all the time. Yeah, any sort of smoked meat, pizza, definitely pizza, any type of Italian food, and honestly, like pasta, pizza, some really good Italian food, some really good Mexican food, honestly. Guac, chips and guac, I could slam down like guac by like cupfuls. Like literally every time I have like chips and guac, like I'll take one chip and I'll scoop like maybe like at least a few tablespoons of guac on top of that because I just love guac. But yeah, basically that stuff. I can't really think of anything else, like some good breakfast food actually, some good like biscuits and gravy and just like really hearty like classic American breakfast food, like traditional American breakfast food, like hash browns, sausage, bacon, eggs, biscuits and gravy, pancakes, waffles, that kind of stuff. All the stuff you find in like your typical like classic American breakfast, or if you go to like a brunch spot, love that. That's pretty much it for cheat foods. So yeah, that's a good question. All right, next question. How hard should I be training? So this really depends, but I would say by and large, a lot of people are simply not training hard enough. So a good way I say to tell how hard you're training is, and this is a very simple way, this can be like a way that any beginner or anyone literally in the gym can apply for themselves, as like your last 3 to 4 reps should feel very difficult. And although I know feeling very difficult can be very subjective, and for some people, like they might tap out like when it actually gets difficult. So it's hard to keep an objective eye on that. So yeah, how hard you should be training. I think in terms of that, like a better way would be, are you increasing the weight or increasing the amount of reps that you do every session or every week? Or yeah, so from session to session, week to week, month to month, are you increasing that stimulus? That's basically a good general way to put it, because if you do that, just by doing that, you're eventually going to get to a point where like you're going to be training hard enough because your body like doesn't adapt that fast. Like it's going to take some time for your body. Like every session is not going to feel easy, but as long as you keep yourself accountable and push for more, you're eventually going to find that point where like it's really difficult and you're actually going to have to grind those reps out, and you're going to find that point where like the last 3 to 4 reps feel very difficult. But in the sense of like being objective, like the science shows that how to know your last few reps are hard enough is actually when the reps start to slow down. And I think I discussed this last podcast on like the whole force velocity curve thing, but basically, as your muscles have to generate more force and more mechanical tension, then the reps are going to like, as those like few reps get very hard, you're gonna have to like grind them out. And that's basically how you know you're training hard enough, because as you grind them out, those reps get very hard. Your muscles have to generate more and more force. And, if you've ever done a very hard set and those last few reps where you really have to feel like you grind out, like you're pushing as fast as you can, but those reps just take a longer time to complete than, let's say, like the first 5 you did. That's kind of a good measure if you're training hard enough. And by and large, people are simply not training hard enough because they don't even get anywhere close to that point. Most people tap out before they get to that point or just as they get to that point. So the next time you do that, if you have ever felt this point, like keep going. That's basically the point that you need to get to if you want to make a significant amount of progress. So that's in short how hard you should be training. As pretty much look at rep velocity, like when your reps start to slow down and you start grinding them out, that's kind of like, that's a good point as to where you should stick to. Sometimes you can keep going. Definitely don't tap out, but do like at least like 2 to 3 reps like after you get to that point. And that's basically the point as to how hard you should be training. All right, next question. Is it important to break parallel when squatting? So this is going to be a controversial answer. So I'm going to say no, it's not important to break parallel when you're squatting. It's actually going to depend on your goals. Now, in the fitness community, there are 2 main camps. So there are people who are like, you need to squat ass to grass, you need to get max range of motion in order to get the most amount of muscle growth and strength adaptations and all that. And then there are the people who are like, oh, it depends on your goals. You shouldn't, like half squatting is completely fine. Like you don't need to squat that deep to get all the benefits. And it's like, yeah, there's like one research study that shows, shallow squatting shows as much results as deep squatting. And first of all, both of those camps are completely false. Like you should not be only shallow squatting, like eagle lifting a bunch of weights and moving like with like 2 inches of range of motion. And also you shouldn't need to be squatting ass to grass, like with a perfect squat every single time and putting your lower back under load and like doing all these like stupid things. But it's basically, what are you trying to get out of the movement? And yeah, how far is like the active range of motion for your muscles? So for most people, like you can get to like around parallel and that should be good enough. It's going to depend, like I said, on what your goals are. Because if you're doing like, let's say a max knee flexion heel elevated squat, then you're probably going to have to break parallel. You're going to drive your knees as forward as you can. You're probably going to have to squat pretty deep in order to get that max knee flexion, in order to target your quads and, get that maximal stimulus for your quads. Whereas if you're doing something like a glute focused squat, then you'll push your hips back. And for a lot of people, you actually don't need to go super deep. You just need to go to the point where you are pushing your hips as far back from that bar path as you can. And then basically coming back up. And then the deeper you go doesn't mean you're going to get more out of it. Sometimes the deeper you go, you put your back into posterior pelvic tilt. And that's when your hips actually start to like roll under. And that's what you commonly see it called butt wink. And that's basically when the load gets like transferred from your glutes and your quads and actually starts getting transferred into your lower back, and you actually start to put your lower back under excessive load, which is not good. Like you if you're trying to like target your glutes and quads, then you shouldn't get your lower back to do the work. You should be maximally loading the muscles that you're trying to train. So yeah, that's as far that's about covers like, is it important to break parallel? I'd say it's only especially important, or it's only something you have to do if you're doing like powerlifting or some sort of like other competition sport, or some sort of competition or sporting event where you need to squat to parallel. But other than that, for like everyday purposes, you should be training your muscles through the active range of motion. And to address the other side of the argument where like, oh, shallow squatting is okay, you get the same benefits. No, you don't. It's been consistently shown in research that you get more muscle growth if you train muscles in longer lengths. And so by cutting short the range of motion, you're actually cutting like the amount of gains that you can actually make. So yeah, there's such a thing as not enough range of motion, and there's such a thing as too much range of motion. But again, it's finding that active range of motion, that range of motion where the muscle is being worked like fully, from fully shortened to fully lengthened. And that's where basically you should be training if you want to maximally target the tissue that you're trying to train and get the most out of your exercises. All right, next question: how long to see fat loss results? This is a question I get all the time again, and I want to say it depends on your goals. Like for some people, if you're leaner, you're gonna have to lose fat at a very slow rate, and you're probably not gonna see results for at least like 8 weeks. Whereas someone who has a lot of fat to lose, they might be able to see results in the first month because they just have so much fat to lose. But other than that, like I would say, honestly, a realistic timeline for most people, like if you're doing everything right, is anywhere from 2 to 6 months to see a significant amount of fat loss results. Like 2 months is a good amount to see some results, like to see that things are moving in the right direction. The first month, usually you don't see anything because that's kind of where you're starting to get habits into place, and you might mess up here and there. But like the second month, that's when you kind of start to feel the groove and like really dial things in, and that's when you kind of start to see your results accelerate a little bit. And then 6 months down the line is usually, for a lot of people, that's when you like, holy shit, I've seen a lot of change from what I've been doing. And so yeah, anywhere from 2 to 6 months. And yeah, that's basically it for fat loss. And it's also, yeah, like I said, it's going to depend on your deficit size and how much fat you have to lose and all that. But generally 2 to 6 months is a very realistic time to see like a significant amount of progress. Like for most people, you're probably not going to get to your end goal in that amount of time unless you're pretty close to it already. But it's a good amount of time to see some progress from where you like started at. So yeah, 2 to 6 months. All right, last question here in the Q&A before we wrap this up. Lifting more weight but getting less reps. Does this mean I made progress? So in terms of progressive overload, like a method I use right now is called double progression for a lot of like my clients and also myself, is that you work into a rep range, and then once you get to the top end of that rep range for your working sets, then you'll increase weight. And by increasing weight, you're lifting a heavier weight, so it's obvious that you're going to be dropping reps. So does that mean you made progress? So in a sense, yes, you did make progress because you got to the end of the rep range, you've gotten stronger, you've definitely built more muscle. And so now that it's time to drop the reps but increase the weight, does that mean you made progress? So in a sense, yes, you did make progress, because if you didn't increase reps until the end of the rep range, then you wouldn't have increased weight and dropped reps. So in the grand scheme of things, yes, you're doing that, but physiologically, you didn't make progress, because if you think about it, like you got enough adaptations to lift, like let's say 50 pounds for 12 reps, and you're working in the 8 to 12 rep range. And then the following session, you're going to do 55 or 60 pounds. You're going to increase the weight, and then you're probably going to drop down to like, let's say 8 reps. So in that sense, in that singular session, you didn't make any progress, because all the adaptations have gotten you up to that point where you can lift that amount of weight. But here's the thing, and this is not like something to discourage you. This is just like the basic scientific fact that you didn't like physiologically, like you didn't gain more muscle, you didn't gain more strength. It's just that you got to the end of that rep range, so you're dropping reps and increasing the weight so that you can keep on progressing. So because you did that, like otherwise you'd be going for 50 reps and you're trying to add 13, 14 reps, 15 reps, and like that could get pretty inefficient pretty quickly. Like you don't want to be building your way up to like 30 reps. It's going to take forever to complete that set at that point. So to keep things efficient, by doing in that 8 to 12 rep range, you're going to increase weight and you're going to drop reps. So in that singular session, you're not making progress. But let's say you did 8 reps this session, and in the following session, you got 55 pounds, 60 pounds, whatever it is you increased your weight to, and you got 9 reps. So now that in that session, between that session where you got 8 reps and the session that you got 9 reps, that's when you made progress. So when you increase weight and drop reps, that doesn't indicate progress in itself in terms like from a physiological perspective. But when you go from 8 reps to 9 reps, that's when you physiologically made progress. So yeah, it's not a measure of did you make progress, but rather it's just a facilitation of like increasing progress in a more efficient way versus just like constantly adding reps like forever until like you get to like 30 reps, which is inefficient. So by doing that where we stay in a lower rep range and increasing weight and dropping reps, that's just a more efficient way to track overall progress. And as long as you're like you drop reps and you're still building your way back up to 12 reps, then that means you're making progress. So yeah, that about wraps it up. That was the last question. So yeah, thank you so much for the questions. This was kind of fun to do a Q&A and to do something that's like kind of unconventional versus like my other podcasts where I dive really deep into one specific topic. But yeah, and to wrap this up, if you currently aren't following me on Instagram, go ahead and give me a follow there. Austin Chan Fitness. It is also in the podcast show notes. Yeah, Instagram, I spend a little bit more time on Instagram than TikTok nowadays just because it's a more like integrated platform, so where I can like engage more with my followers. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for listening. Yeah, hit this link in my show notes for all of my other platforms if you don't know that I do have other platforms. But yeah, and that, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next one.